SABC Group CEO Nomsa Chabeli says the public broadcaster has an important role to play in the country and beyond its borders. Chabeli is part of the discussions at the M20 Summit. The gathering is looking at a number of issues ahead of the G20 Summit in November. Our reporter Khayelihle Khumalo has more.
Well, certainly quite a very significant moment here in Johannesburg. The M20 Summit, it's underway. A lot of issues being explored. As you know that South Africa will have a privilege of hosting the G20 Leaders Summit come November. So it's all about self-reflection for the media, especially given the very important role that they will play. And joining us now is our very own SABC Group CEO, Ms. Chabeli. So once again, ma'am, thank you so much for your time and welcome to SABC.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
Lovely. So, first of all, Nomsa, let's look at the role of the SABC. Obviously, it's a very big moment for South Africa, showcasing its beauty, but also for Global South at large. Let's look at the role of the SABC when it comes to the coverage of the G20, especially given South Africa's priorities close to our heart.
As we know, the SABC's role is to inform and educate and entertain South Africans. But most importantly, what it means is that when opportunities such as the G20 present themselves, it is SABC's strategy to take that and become part of it and be able to take the information and educate South Africans to ensure that everyone actually is participating, not only in the outcomes actually of the G20 summit, but actually be part of building those frameworks and ensuring that the plurality of voices are included in those discussions.
Nomsa, let's talk about the issue of freedom of expression, a very critical issue. And we know that SABC has always been very clear, independent and impartial. But issues around, for example, the safety of journalists. We know that at times it gets so volatile. Let's look at that for the SABC in terms of prioritizing the safety of the journalists, the attacks on social media and many other things.
It's important for me to say something. Trust and credibility are values that are critical for any media house, particularly in public broadcasting. And we cannot have trust and credibility if our journalists are being compromised. It's important for us as the SABC to recognize that. And it's something that we'll always fight for and steward as the public broadcaster. When we talk about freedom of expression, there's all sorts of requirements that come with safeguarding that. And as the SABC, we see ourselves playing a critical role in that, hence our participation in the M20 Summit. Because now more than ever, we're seeing some serious risks that are emerging from a global perspective, not just, let's say, in the East, etc., but it's something that most public broadcasters are grappling with in terms of how do we ensure that in the world that is under so much contestation, that truth is protected, that journalists who actually sacrifice themselves and their lives to ensure that we have access to truth, we have access to information, are protected so that they can be able to deliver that for us. So from an SABC perspective, it's something that we cannot compromise. The safety of our journalists is important. The safety of freedom of expression is, enshrined in terms of our constitution as South Africans. And as the SABC, we are the biggest, proponents of that constitution. And if you look at the reason why public broadcasting exists really exists to ensure that democratic discourse is safe. And the journalists play a critical role in ensuring that that is enshrined.
One of the critical issues being discussed in Nomsa has to do with the funding model. We know with the SABC, for example, we spoke to Minister Malatsi and he spoke about the issue of really trying to expedite, the processing of the SABC bill. And I would imagine that's something that you certainly do welcome.
We welcome that because it's important that the SABC's funding model is finalized. We are talking now about freedom, for journalists, freedom of expression, etc. But if we don't have sustainable funding models, you get to a point where public media outlets are now prioritizing commercial, sustainability and compromising on the public good in terms of media. And therefore, as SABC, we welcome the prioritization of the funding model of the SABC because what that will allow, it will allow us to fund the public mandate of the SABC. It will allow us to fund universal access that is very important to us. So it really is going to allow us to play a bigger role in society, and that we don't look at it as a trade-off where we sit and we are really at the moment competing with diminishing advertising revenue that is making up 83% of our income as the SABC. And with that funding being resolved, it's really going to allow us to really expand our reach and ensure that when we talk about universal access and access to information and access to truth, and ensuring that South Africans, and not just South Africans, by the way, SABC also plays a big role in taking South African stories and taking them out to the world. And if you look at the role we'll play at the G20, that of ensuring that the public, media outlets that are going to be in the country are going to have that type of access. We are going to be working directly with them, and we are actually going to be beaming out South African stories to the rest of the world. And therefore, that funding model is more than ever very critical for the SABC. It's an urgent matter.
All right. Nomsa, thank you so much indeed for your time. Of course, that's the SABC Group CEO, Nomsa Chabeli, talking about the role of the SABC. We know that Section 16 of the Constitution is very clear about the media freedom in South Africa, and we know of the very pivotal role played by the SABC across all the languages and religious access across the length and breadth of South Africa. Khayelihle Khumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.